Good morning. This may be the shortest day of the world, or maybe the shortest day of this year, because we gave away an hour of it, but still, we'll soldier on. And I'm going to speak today about, well, the Feast of Lots, for all you gamblers. Sometime between 350 and 460 BC, Mordecai, who was a Benjamite Jew, wrote this little history that we know as the Book of Esther. It takes place after the Babylonian captivity, but he set it down for the Jewish people, most especially to display the providence of God in regard to Israel, and to keep in memory God's salvation for future generations. Curiously, God is never named in the book of Esther, although he is sought after diligently in prayer and fasting, and steadfastly relied upon by Esther and Mordecai and the Jewish people living in Persia at the time, or so Mordecai's story implies. In the Tanakh, that's the Jewish Bible, Esther is found neither in the Torah, the law, nor in the Nevi'im, which is the prophets, but in the Ketuvim, the writings, or as some of us think of that, in the teachings. But by gum, she's in good company. Right alongside Psalms and Proverbs, Job and the Song of Songs, and Ruth and Lamentations, Ecclesiastes, Daniel, Ezra, Nehemiah, and 1st and 2nd Chronicles. And all of these you can find some really good teaching and some really deep thought if you study them. The word Esther is derived from a Persian word for star, Stara. However, her Hebrew name was Hadassah, which means myrtle. Esther, as we know her from our Bibles, was her public, assumed name for the Persian court. Now, Purim, which literally means lots, and is sometimes known as the Feast of Lots, Purim is a Jewish holiday in which Jews commemorate being saved from not only persecution, but from destruction in this ancient Persian Empire. According to the book of Esther, in the Torah, the Jewish people of the city of Shushan were threatened by the nemesis of the day, who cast lots, thereby we get that name of the holiday, to determine the date in which his plan would be enacted, the 13th day of Adar. This year, the 13th day of Adar will start on the evening of March 23rd. Okay. The people in the story of Esther, their concerns were living in a country that reached from India all the way to Ethiopia. There, its king ruled over 127 different provinces, managed by princes and military leaders who were governed by a very careful, controlling hand, where the protocols were very rigid. Everything and everyone had a place, and everything and everyone was kept to their place. Indeed, the king's first wife, Vashti, lost her place because she failed to do the king's bidding. Some who failed would have lost their lives. She only lost her place. To replace the king's wife, His minions scoured the kingdom for for the most beautiful virgins, from which he may choose yet another wife. Okay. One of those chosen was Hadassah, Mordecai's adopted daughter. Her own parents, and after they died, and Mordecai adopted her into his family, she was instructed in Hebrew and Persian, in reading, writing, and arithmetic. When she was selected as one of those offered as a potential wife of the king, Mordecai told her to give her name as Esther, not to reveal her lineage or her people or to make an exception of herself, but to be helpful and modest, nor to ask for special favor, even in the harem with the eunuchs nor the other women. Thus, in her new environment, in addition to courtly polishing and deportment, she gained much favor with all who met her. So we're going to start in in chapter 2, verses 16 and 17 of Esther. Then Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus at his royal house in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebet, in the 7th year of his reign. Now the king loved Esther more than all the other women he saw, and she won his grace and favor more than all the other virgins. So he placed the royal crown upon her head and made her queen after Vashti. Now verse 20 tells us Esther had not yet made known her lineage or her people, just as Mordecai had told her. Esther continued to follow Mordecai's instructions as she had done while he was bringing her up. Okay, a little bit about Mordecai. Mordecai, around this time, overhears a plot between two eunuch guards who intend to murder the king. So he tells Esther, who in turn tells the king. An investigation reveals all is as Mordecai told Esther, and the guilty parties are hung. Now, back to our story. Haman, and if you were Jewish, you'd be making noises and hissing at his name, but we're not doing that. Haman is a high official in the king's court, and he hates the Jews, particularly one special Jew named Mordecai, because although the king has done Haman favor and honor, Mordecai does not bow down to him, nor does he tremble at his approach. So Haman devised a plan to destroy all of the Jews, and even plots to determine the best time to enact this plan. Then he goes to the king to tell him about it. Esther 3:8. There is a certain people scattered and dispersed among all the people in the provinces of your kingdom, whose laws differ from those of every other people, and who do not obey the king's laws. It is not the king's interest to tolerate them. He goes on to say that those who will carry out the business of taking care of this little problem, he will pay for. So the king gives over his signet ring to authorize his planned action. Esther 3:13. Dispatches were sent by couriers to all the king's provinces, stating to destroy, slay, and annihilate all the Jews, from youth to the elderly, both the little children and women, on a certain day, the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, to plunder their possessions. That was determined by casting lots, which is how that was determined. Pearl. When Esther finds out about this, understandably, she's horrified, but she's uncertain what to do. So she sends a messenger to Mordecai, who advised her to approach the king. Esther 4:14. He tells her, "For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place. But you and your father's house will perish. But you and who knows whether you have attained royal status for such a time as this." But Esther certainly knows that to approach the king without a royal summons can mean death. So she asks Mordecai and the Jews of the city to fast and pray for her for 3 days. And she will do the same before approaching the king, adding, "If I perish, I perish." A very Jewish thing to say. However, on the 3rd day, after she is dressed in special finery, the king notices Esther in the front of the hall. And he invites her in. In turn, she invites the king and Haman to a banquet which she has prepared. Both the king and Haman attend her banquet, and the king asks what she would like to have in return for up to half his kingdom. She replies that she would like the king and Haman to come to another banquet that she will prepare for them on the following day. And then she will do as he requests. Esther 5:9, verses 12 and 14. Haman went out that day happy and in good spirits. However, when Haman saw Mordecai at the king's gate, and he did not rise or tremble before him, Haman was filled with rage against Mordecai. Haman